All right, your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Raggio Mercantile Shop in Madison. Josh Raggio is ready for you to join the fun and the party at Raggio Mercantile Shop in Madison. It's right down from Burgers Blues Barbecue, B3 on Main Street. It's in that new development where you see all the cool zero lot line homes. It's behind Half Shell. Raggio Mercantile Shop for your graduation gifts. We want to welcome in Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, good weekend for Hail State baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably the thing that my probably biggest takeaway from the weekend was collectively between the fan base and apparently the coaching staff and the players, there was never this fear of losing, right? I think the expectation was to win, and it built upon each game. And just even like that Saturday game out at Auburn last week, State gets up 10-1, and you start thinking, man, there's a lot of game left here. We may find a way to lose this thing. I didn't ever sense any of that this weekend. I think State played with a lot of confidence. I thought the fan base was incredible. And I think this is where we talk about having everybody just kind of coming together. You know, as the team breaks the pregame huddle, getting basically a standing ovation from the fans, and Bryce Chance made that incredible catch yesterday, and you know he gets a standing ovation coming off the field. And Michael O'Brien, that's what happens, man. Like when guys make big defensive plays, and the next guy's like, "Hey, I want to go do that too," you know. But I thought it was a weekend where State played up to their potential and got 3 wins that they desperately needed. And now that the sentiment around the season has changed a good bit, because now you don't have the midweek. You got Ole Miss coming in this weekend. They're scuffling a little bit, lost 3 of the last 4 series. And it's so tough to win on the road in this league. And I think there's a lot of optimism at State taking that series. And then you head to Missouri, a team that's given State some trouble at times the last few years, but arguably the worst team that's played in the modern era of the Southeastern Conference. And so you start thinking about that. It's like, hey, you win the series against Kentucky, you sweep that one. Let's say you get 2 out of 3 this weekend, and you go to Missouri and get 3 up there. Now you're in a situation where you could finish 500 when everybody left you dead and gone, you know?
All right. So I never, you and I talk all the time about this stuff on the air and off. And they're still in a head coaching search, but they're trying to make the postseason like you just laid out, as they should. I mean, that they should be locked in on this the next few weeks, and they have an opportunity to get there, which would be, because anything can happen once any SEC team, for the most part, gets in the tournament. Now, I never was on board with Nick Mingione, not because of who he is, or he's had success at Kentucky, but $6 million, and this is what I tweeted out. This is not Tony Vitello or Bakich at Clemson or Skip Bertman from 1995. So he was never on my list. And I would have been furious if the Mississippi State administration had, invested $6 million to buy him out to bring him in, because there's other guys that you can get the same results, talent. Do you believe that he's off the table now because of the $6 million and, well, not even really what happened this weekend? But I don't know. You may comment on that, because, Nick is still a really good coach. But do you believe that with the $6 million and whatever else, that Nick Mingione's off the table?
Yeah, I think that's an extreme long shot. And I felt that way before the weekend. But you don't help. The advocates for Nick Mingione did not get any ammunition to work with this weekend, right? I thought they managed it pretty well. They just don't have the talent, and I think in most years that's going to be the case, But the reality of it is do you get enough juice for the squeeze, right? When you think about where we are from a financial standpoint in college athletics these days, not just specifically at Mississippi State, but just around the country, if you're willing to go write that check, I think it has to be a Tony Vitello or a Jim Schlossnagle or a Jay Johnson. You're right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, somebody that's probably won the whole thing. I just don't know if you can justify that expenditure when it's probably a better use of your money. Do I think Nick would be a good fit here? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No.
Okay. I think only one assistant coach should be considered, Steve, and that should be Justin Parker. And not right now. I'm talking about if that's where, if they win a bunch of games and Selman and everybody feels like that's the way to go. But I still think the focus has to be a sitting head coach. Outside of any, and we've named the 6 to 8 to 10 rock stars that you try to poach that, for the most part, outside of Schlossnagle and Bakich, don't really ever leave. My guy is Willie Bloomquist, who's tearing it up at Arizona State with no budget, but there's others in play. And the Will Coggin thing is, I think, been overplayed, and there's obviously some friends and family on your board that are PRing and pushing for him, and that's great. Maybe 6 to 8 years from now. How do you see it on the head coach to assistant coach now that we're a weekend to Lemonis being let go?
Well, and it's interesting. I could make a case to do almost anything when it comes to basically the 3 tiers of candidates. I think, again, ideally you want the sitting Power 4 coach if you can get them. And the problem with that's going to be is, okay, what am I going to get in rev share, right? It's not just about my salary, and that's all it used to be 5 years ago. Hey, give me, what is my salary and what is my baseball budget? What is my pool for assistants? That was very clean and easy, right? Well, now it's like, how much money are you going to give me to retain and build a roster? That's going to be the first question that every coach sits down and talks to Zach Selman about before we even get into philosophical things. And what do you who are you and what are you about? How much money am I going to have to work with? And so you have to think about who is going to leave their situation to come to your situation if they don't have more money to build a roster than what they have where they are. That is going to be the real question. That's going to be the challenge, is are we going to provide enough resources to ensure that a sitting Power 4 coach can come here and say, this is a no-brainer. With the facilities and infrastructure and finances I have here, yes, this is the right move for me and my family. I'm going to get my kids out of school. We're going to skip going to Disney this summer, and we're going to go work to Portland, and we're going to turn this thing around next year. That's going to be a difficult thing to do, right? And because here's the thing, as great, as much as we love Stargell and Duty Noble and everything else, guys are not going to commit their careers just to come here and put on the M/S unless they know they can win big. The next category, of course, is your G5 coaches. And I think there's only a handful of those that I would even consider because of some of the points we've talked about before. If you've never had to go compete head-to-head with LSU, Ole Miss, or Arkansas for a kid, you don't know what it requires. You may think you do, but you don't know what it requires. And there's a learning curve with that. And it's a different brand of athlete. I mean, it truly is. And then there is the sitting SEC assistant. If they're not an SEC assistant, I'm not interested in talking to them. I'm not real keen on the assistant coach anyway.
No.
But if you are not an assistant coach in this league that knows the recruiting footprint, that knows what it's like to go head-to-head with Dave Van Horn and Jay Johnson, I'm not even taking that phone call. That's how I feel about it. Because if I'm going to have to go hire a first-time head coach, it better be somebody that already understands the landscape and understands the league.
Then that's Justin Parker and no one else, in my opinion. I'm not advocating for him right now. Let's see I actually think he'd be a pretty damn good option. But I think you've got to go ask all the big players. We've been through all those. Make everybody uncomfortable. Make everybody re-up and pay a bunch of money. And then, so outside of that, who's your number one I'm not talking about O'Connor, Bakich, Wes Johnson. Because I've got Willie Bloomquist. I don't want Pollard at Duke. I just don't feel good about that, Steve. He's been there. Look, he's done a good job, but he's been in North Carolina for 12 years and pretty much his whole life in the Carolinas. And there's something in the water up there because there's just players for days. in North Carolina and South Carolina. I don't know how that happened starting 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but more power to him. My guy is Willie Bloomquist because of his budget, 125,000 NIL and winning, and he's poached a ton of players from this area, including 2 Tennessee players, as you know, from last year. Some people like Fitzgerald, blah, blah, blah. Who's your guy outside of the rock stars? And before you get down to Justin Parker.
Well, I really like Fitzgerald. I think Dan Fitzgerald, and no one knows the league, and he's kind of like, and I hate to say it this way, but in some respects, even though he doesn't have the same tenure, it's kind of like the brand value version of Nick Mangione. What I mean by that is that he has Kansas as a top 25 team. Kansas, a team that a program that absolutely does not care about baseball, right? I mean, you're going to be number 3 there if you're lucky when it comes to sports, because it's going to be men's basketball and then football. And this is a guy that spent some time at LSU, so he knows the league. He's already proven that he can run the show a little bit. I think that's a guy that you've got to consider. And then, listen, I know Orlov hadn't done a whole lot, but when you look at what the Anteaters have done with nothing, that they have nothing out there financially, and you look at where they are and what they could be, I think that's an intriguing name for sure. And listen, the O'Connor thing, my concern about that is, and listen, there's always smoke, right, early in these searches, because a lot of people want their name attached to the searches to better the situation they're already in. I think that might be the case here because when they went through this last year and had this fire drill, and then here we are again. I think he's just trying to better that situation. Not to say that he wouldn't leave for the right circumstance, but again, the initial point, can you make his ability to build a roster easier at Mississippi State than at Virginia? A place that he's been 21 years, and coaches, you don't have the big Power 5 move very often in college coaching.
Yeah, does he have the fire in the belly at 60 after everything he's accomplished at Virginia?
Well, he's not 60. He's basically a year older than me. And so I can promise.
Oh, he's only like 50. What are you, 52?
Yeah.
51?
Yeah, I'll be 53 this year. I think he's 54. But
damn! I just put 6. I'm sorry, Brian O'Connor. I just put 6 years on you. My bad. Okay.
And then you kind of watch your mouth a little bit too, because now you're acting like I don't have fire in the belly, And
man, I know you've got it.
So my point being though is, I would not be opposed to O'Connor, but I got to make sure that he is legitimate with this. I can't get so far down the road with him, and then all of a sudden we send him the contract, and he decides, hey guys, I think I'm just going to stay here at Virginia.
Exactly.
They're gonna, and then all of a sudden you're so far down the path, you're scrambling a little bit. Now Vec Selman's a very methodical guy. I know that he is not just going to get tunnel vision about a particular candidate, but that's the
because he did in football, and so he's still learning. He was locked into Jeff Levy in football. You could have poached Brett Bielema, Barry Odom, John Summerall, or Manny Diaz. And we'll see if Jeff works. But there's a lot on the line there. So I agree. Yeah, he had tunnel vision and got locked in football. Is he going to be able to see the whole room in baseball? All right, so listeners are asking, you mentioned Fitzgerald at Kansas, who's had a hell of a year. Bloomquist is 32-17 at Arizona State with a 40 RPI. 14-year MLB. Do you remember when he was the leadoff hitter at Arizona State, Steve, in the late 90s, and was virtually couldn't get him out, hit 420. They played Southern Cal in the national championship, and then he went on to MLB. Do you remember any of that?
I do. And the thing that I go back to with him is, like, one of the things you mentioned, is this a Timmy Tadlock situation, right? Because, Tadlock, it seemed like every year you looked up, he's beating somebody in a super regional, and it's like, but Tadlock's at home, right? Is Bloomquist at home? And is he going to be a guy they're going to choose to invest in? Because they're more likely to invest in their own people than they are just somebody that's passing through and using that job as a stepping stone. It's like Arizona State's a proud program, one of the top 15 programs in the history of the college baseball game. And so now all of a sudden they got things going the right direction. Can you incentivize him to leave his alma mater and come to Mississippi State? That may prove to be a challenge. And one of the things that I want to caution people about now, and we see this all the time, it gets out in the college baseball media and people thought, oh, well, this is what's going to happen. Man, these guys in college baseball, it's more fickle than it is in college football. Because a lot of times when you start hearing names in college football, you get the reward, right? It's like, well, once the name gets out there, it's being leaked. I mean, there's so many leaks in college baseball, and we had guys, when Cohen hired Lamonis, we had national college baseball writers breaking news about guys that weren't even candidates. But and how do you know, right? And so, we may have talked to this guy, may have had the introductory conversation just to see if there's any interest. And next thing you know, these people are using it to leverage their own situations. And then all of a sudden your fans think, oh my gosh, our search is in free fall because somebody else broke a story about a guy that never even had a formal interview. And I just want to kind of make sure that people understand that aspect of it. Just because something feels like it's a big deal now or next week, doesn't mean it's even the real thing.
Well, they're just getting their buddies. I mean, Kendall Rogers does a great job, but they're also they're throwing that out to get their buddies raises, Steve, which is fine. Yeah. I hope Selman runs it up on everybody in the conference in a sport where ADs don't want to spend money. I hope he runs it up. I hope he puts out, like you said, that kind of conversation feeler, so that guy or his agent can say, hey, Mississippi State contacted me. And while they may not have offered, and the AD immediately, is like, oh hell, we got to do a deal. Like Wes Johnson, run it up on Georgia, run it up on Greg Byrne and Rob Vaughn, run it up on Sully, all these guys. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm always about making my opponents weaker, right? And that's an aspect of it. Make people want to spend more than they want to, this whole thing is a will to power, right? I mean, it's not just, this not just go hiring a coach. I think Mississippi State's got to throw their weight around a little bit. And I had a conversation last week with some people, and it's one of the things that I said, when you get ready to break this thing down and you think about presentation day, right? When you think about the day that I'm going to present the new coach to the Mississippi State fan base, we'll have the big thing at Duty Noble, and everybody will be hot and ready to go get a drink. But which man do you need standing next to Zach Selman that galvanizes his fan base, but also too kind of makes some people in this conference say, you know what, we're going to have to work a lot harder because Mississippi State just got better. When you're sitting down and talking to somebody, if you can't envision that moment, then you don't need to talk to that person. You've got to get this hire right. And it may not be the optics on the front end. It may not be the sexy name the casual fan knows, but you got to go get the guy that baseball people know. You got to get a guy that's going to come in here and be obsessed with winning a national championship. And that's, to me, that's a requirement for employment when it comes to Mississippi State baseball. Don't come up here and talk to me about how you want to host or how much you want to go to Omaha. If you're not committed to winning the national championship, then we can't hire that person.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. You mentioned Willie Bloomquist at Arizona State being an alum. So he's making less than $400,000. I mean, I think you could offer him $1 million. There's rumors that they're going to commit $3 million to the portal. He's dealing with $125,000. I do think the one difference, Steve, in Willie Bloomquist at Arizona State and Tim Tadlock at Texas Tech is that Texas Tech has committed the resources, whereas Arizona State has not.
Yeah, I agree, but that may not stop them though. But and that's the thing about all of this too is like we're all you and I both are just trying to kind of get a sense of what the landscape looks like because this red share thing changes so many of the dynamics. There's some things that would have made sense 5 years ago that aren't going to make sense now. You'd say there's no way that guy turns that job down. Well, there are a lot of people out there that are going to be thinking, if I don't have the money to build a roster,
exactly, then
there's no point in us having a conversation. Whereas 5 years ago, it's like, oh, I get to go to Mississippi State, the place that Ron Polk built, one of the most prestigious programs in college baseball history. Yeah, honey, call the moving agent. We're going. Get the.
Well, that's together. My point. Is Mississippi State is going to have the money, and the Arizona. You can pick. I don't know if Virginia's going to have it. I don't. It doesn't look like Arizona State's going to have it. It doesn't look like obviously, like you mentioned, UC Irvine with Orloff, who's done good work there. But they're never going to have $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million plus to spend on a roster, whereas Mississippi State is. What would Parker have to do for you to, if Zach Selman called you in 3 or 4 weeks and said, I'm hiring him, what would Justin Parker have to do for you to take that call and say, I'm 100% on board?
I think he probably needs to win a regional. And maybe some other people feel differently. I think Parker is going to be a fantastic head coach somewhere. It could be here. But I want to make sure that we avoid the Gary Henderson parallels, because I don't think these guys are at different points in their careers.
No question.
Justin Parker is ascending, and I love Gary to death, but Gary was on the back end of his career, and it's just a different dynamic, right? All the way around. A lot of people would say, well, this is kind of like the Arnett situation. I don't see it that way at all,
no. Right?
And as you mentioned, you're after the LSU series. I mean, you're basically giving, Parker the opportunity to prove himself.
Right.
But I think, listen, I see it on social media this morning and last night. Hey, let's just go give it to Parker. I don't think we have to be in any hurry.
No.
And I think, hey, the early returns are favorable, right? But I think something special kind of has to happen because I think this is an opportunity for you to make a generational hire.
Let me ask it this way. There is strong rumors, currency, that Justin Parker wants to stay in Starkville. If you hire a coach and they want to keep him, you think that Parker would strongly consider staying on as a pitching coach since he's top 3 in the country in salary?
I mean, I think that's a possibility, but I think it's got to be the right situation for Park and his family. You know what I mean? It can't be just, okay, well, we just don't want to move, so we're going to hang around. And I think when you begin to consider some of the coaches that are rumored to be in contention, because at this point, just about everybody's a candidate, right? Let's say you look at, if you go get a Will Coggin or a Skylar Meade or whatever, somebody like that, I think there's a window for that if Park is receptive to it, right?
I'll just take Justin. Actually, over those two guys, I'll just take Justin Parker.
Yeah, and that may work out that way. But
I mean, I'm not saying it will. I won't. A Willie Bloomquist or that should be the floor, and then we're talking about all these other guys, Wes Johnson and O'Connor. But hell, if it's down to Will Coggin, Skylar, and these are all talented guys, but if it's down to Will Coggin, Skylar Meade, and Justin Parker, you're going Justin Parker if he wins some games on the way out. But like you said, that scenario has to play out, so we'll see.
But along those lines too, I mean, really think about this. I mean, and Park could make.
I've got about 30 seconds, Steve.
Park could make it real interesting, right? If you take the team that was 7-14 and you end up finishing 500 or close to 500 and make a regional and go win a regional, I think you got to make a case.
Right.
That Parker may be the answer. So.
Okay. All right, we'll do this again later in the week. Thanks, man.
See you.
GenesPage.com, 247 Sports. Steve Robertson talking about, I just don't think O'Connor's going to do it at the end of the day. I think he's going to play Virginia for as much as he can. They'll never give him what he wants, but he's been there forever. Hour number 3 coming up on the Out of Bounds Show.